This is the way I view my wife. This is the way we view our relationship, that we do everything together. We do it as a team. It's a lifetime project. It takes planning. It takes effort. You have to work at it. And there's no schools to train you. Isn't that funny? You can get a driver's license. You have to take classes. Do you do that in India? Do you have to take classes to get a driver's license? And you get tested? And if you fail the test, you have to do it again and you don't get your driver's license. Did you have to take classes and have a test to get married? Only in the church there's some classes. Marriage is so important. It's easier to get married sometimes than it is to get a driver's license. And yet what's more important than being married and having a family together? The foundation of a family has to be strong. You can't just assume that your wife is always going to love you. I wake up every morning with this thought on my mind. It's not a bad idea, guys, to think this. I can't assume that my wife is going to love me today. What am I going to do to win her love again today? Would you wives like that if your husband thought that every morning when he woke up? What am I going to do to win my wife's love again today? How am I going to treat her? How am I going to respect her? What am I going to do for her to make her love me today? I think you'd all like that. But wouldn't you guys like it if your wife thought that as well? Sometimes that means, when you guys are dating your girlfriends, you'd brush your teeth, you'd comb your hair, put a little cologne on. Then we get married and we forget to do that. We take our wives for granted. Did you ever see the movie Fiddler on the Roof? And Tavia, who was the old man, in one of the songs, I like this. He sings to his wife, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" And she said, "Of course, I wash your clothes, I cook your food, I clean your house, I raise your kids." He said, "I know you do those things, but do you love me?" We get to the point sometime in a relationship that we do our duties. We do what we're supposed to do. You cook, you clean, you take care of the kids, you go out and work, you bring home the money, you take care of a few things. And of course I love you, don't I? I go out to work for you every day. But the wife has the right to sing to you when you come home, "But do you still love me? I know you go to work for me. I know you do those things. But do you love me?" Love is something between a husband and a wife that has to be worked at. It's something that has to be practiced. You can't just assume it's going to be there 20 years from now. Every once in a while, I surprise my wife with flowers. I don't give her flowers on her birthday because she expects them. I give her flowers on a day that's nothing, so it's a surprise. One time I came home, you got to keep the romance in marriage, and one time I came home, I had to rent a tuxedo for my daughter's wedding, and I still had an extra day before I had to take the tuxedo home. So that night I surprised my wife. I told her to go up to the bedroom and don't come down until I call you. And I put on the tuxedo. I put flowers on the table. I cooked her favorite meal. I sent the other kids away. Nothing to destroy romance like kids in the room. Sometimes it's good to send them to their cousin's house or something. And then I said, "You can come down." And she came down, and there I was in the tuxedo, and I says, "Madam, I love you, and I'm here to serve you today. Please have a seat." And I poured her wine. I gave her this beautiful meal that she loved. And oh my goodness, was there rewards for that? It's a good idea, men, to romance your wife. Did you ever romance her when you were dating her? You did. Do you romance her now that you're married? Maybe sometimes. Another thing I did for my wife. You're going to think it's just because I'm a crazy American, but that maybe is the case. But it doesn't hurt. One day, I planned ahead, and I had all the kids out of the house. I sent them to stay with their cousins. I'm just giving you some ideas. You shouldn't listen to this part. I'm just talking to these guys. And I bought a bunch of rose petals. And I got up early in the morning, and I made her favorite breakfast and put it on a tray. I took the rose petals while she's still sound asleep, and I sprinkled them from her bed all the way into the bathtub. I put, a bubble bath. You know this? They know. Do you guys know what a bubble bath is? They do. Anyway, so I made a bubble bath, and I wrote her a poem about how much I loved her. I wrote her a poem. I know I'm not a very good poet, but she thought it was really good. If you write them a poem, no matter how bad it is, they're going to love it. So, and I put it inside of a bottle, and I put a cork in the bottle, and I put it in the bathtub so it's floating in the bubbles. Then I went and I woke her up. And I said, "Good morning, dear." She said, "Good morning." "What are you up to?" she says. "You have a funny smile on your face." I said, "Today is your day." "What do you mean, smile? What are those flowers on the floor?" I said, "Follow the flowers." But only in a minute. I brought the tray up with her breakfast. Had strawberries and blueberries and all her favorite things. "Where's the kids? I got to feed the kids." "Oh, no, you don't. I sent the kids away." I said, "You enjoy your breakfast, and I'm here to serve you today. And when you're done eating, follow the rose petals." So she ate really fast because she wanted to know where the rose petals went. She was excited, so she followed the rose petals. And there in the bathtub was all that warm water with the bubbles. And she got into the bathtub, and I said, "I'll be downstairs cleaning the house. When you are done, call me." So she went in and she said, "Wait, what's this?" And she opened and read the poem. And she stayed in the bathtub for about an hour. And then she came down. The house was all clean for her. I cleaned it for her. And then we spent the day together. Now see, I don't assume... Thank you. I think the women will clap more if you do this. But I look at my family and my wife as a project still in development. I don't view it as something that's done. I got married to her now. I don't care how much I don't shave and I don't brush my teeth and put cologne on or take a shower anymore. It doesn't matter because I'm already married to you. No. I want her to love me. I want to have a beautiful relationship. I want her to be my best friend. I want her to, "Do you love me? Yes, I love you." I want it this way. And do you know how much nicer a marriage is if you work at it and you have this relationship? How much more peaceful it is? And then my wife, she does things like that for me too, but that's private. I'm not going to tell you what she does for me. But we do these fun things. I'll tell you one more. We would go for a walk around the block. It was a 1 mile, 1 mile, 1 mile. So it took about an hour or so to walk. And one day I got another idea that I'm going to write her a poem in 4 parts. And I wrote it and put it in an envelope, the first part, and I went out in the car and I pinned it to a tree. And then in the next mile, I pinned another part of the poem to a tree and another one and another one. So it's 4 parts. And then we went for a walk. And as we're walking along, she sees the envelope pinned to the tree. And she said, "What's that?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe you should go check it out." She opens it up and it's a poem for her. And it says at the bottom, "To be continued." She couldn't wait to keep walking. She's looking at all the trees like this. "Well, there's another one." And she ran over and she got it. Part 2, "To be continued." Well, to make a long story short, it was a very nice day because she knows that I love her and I took the time to think about her. Even in the busyness of our life, raising kids with careers and jobs and homes and problems and family members and brothers and sisters and all of that, take time to love each other. We had a rule in our family. No matter how busy we were, no matter how consumed we were with the kids and nappies and everything else, every week we would go on a date together. 1 night a week was our date night. And we would go out together even if we just walked around the block holding hands together. Every week I let her know, even when we were raising our kids, "You're so special that I want to have 1 day alone just with you." 1 hour even sometimes, where we would spend together. But then kids come along. You know, when you get married, it's all romance and it's all fun and you're just alone together. But then kids come along and they mess up everything. In a good way, but it's true. There's some young people getting married. You know, I am so glad all my kids are grown up and married. And they call it the empty nest syndrome. Have you ever heard of that? The empty nest syndrome, as though it's a bad thing. It's not. It's lovely when the kids grow up and move out. It's just my wife and I now. I love it. But we have them over to our house all the time. Grandchildren come over. We have 12, and it's very nice to be with them. But I remember when the kids came along, it changed everything. It was much more difficult to be romantic with each other. It was much more difficult to find time to be together. And I used to get jealous thinking that my wife cared more about the kids than she did me. You're always with them. You're changing diapers. You don't talk to me anymore. But then my wife, we worked it out because we always talked about things together. We would spend an hour or two when we're on our dates or weeks talking about how we can raise our family better. We're always discussing and talking about that. Statistics in the United States, and I don't know about the rest of the world about here, but the family is falling apart. There are songs being sung like, I don't feel the love anymore. It's a song about why a husband is leaving his wife because he doesn't feel the love anymore. Do you have to feel the love? I'm talking about romance together, but what if there's a time where you're both very busy and there isn't a lot of romance? Do you then just say, well, I don't feel like I did when I was a teenager about you? When you're a teenager and you first start dating one another, my goodness, your heart's going like this. You can't think about anything else than that beautiful girl or that handsome man. And then you get married and that feeling goes away. It comes back now and then. But a marriage and a relationship is not based on that feeling of a heart fluttering like this and feeling all emotional about. The love in a marriage is called agape love. It's the kind of love God has for us. It's a commitment. It's a covenant. It is unconditional. My wife knows tomorrow that if she gets in a car accident and loses both of her legs and she has to go around in a wheelchair, that I am committed to her 100% with the same kind of love that God has for her, non-conditional. I will push her around in a wheelchair the rest of my life. I won't say to her, oh, but you're not the woman I married. When I married you, you had 2 legs and you were young and beautiful. You're not anymore, and I don't feel the love for you anymore. I'm going to trade you in for a younger model. My wife knows I'm not going to do that because I am a Catholic and I am committed to marriage as a sacrament and that I will love her until death do us part. And it's a great security for me to know that she is the same way, that she'll do the same thing. That's the real kind of love, is agape love, it's called. That's the Greek word, which means that is unconditional. No matter what, I will love you. I will take care of you. But it is nice to keep the romance alive too, even though it's a commitment. It can be much more than that if we keep the romance alive. I see a husband and a wife relationship in a family in another way as well. I view it as a holiness factory. It's a place where we practice holiness. If a person lives by themselves, they can be selfish. And they can be greedy and self-centered. But when you live with a spouse, you have to sacrifice. You have to compromise. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. How do you sharpen a knife? By rubbing it against something, right? You rub it and it sharpens things. Guess how God makes us holy? Guess how He sharpens us? By putting us with someone and they rub on us and they rub on us and they rub on us every day, and we become more compliant. We become more holy. I see my wife as there to help me become a saint. She points out the things that I do wrong. She doesn't do it critically, but she helps me to be better because I have to be less selfish. I have to be thinking of her. And when I'm thinking of her all the time, remember it says, Jesus said that as Christ loved the church, so a husband should love his wife like Christ loved the church. How did Christ love the church? By giving His life for her. How can we as husbands love our wives as the way Christ loved the church? We have to lay our life down for our wives. We talk about a wife submitting to her husband. I'm the head of the house. You have to obey me. I'm the head of the house. You don't have to say that to a wife if you're laying your life down for her every day. If your husband's laid their lives down for you every day, does he have to tell you to obey me, follow me? Or would you do it out of love because he's giving his life to you every day? It makes you want to love him. It makes you want to help him. So the family is a holiness factory. It's a factory where we make saints. And then when children come along, it's even more so, because you don't have much time for yourself anymore. You don't have a lot of time to be selfish anymore. You're right in front of your favorite TV show, and the kid gets sick, and you have to go help the kid. This is where you learn self-sacrifice. You give up your life for your wife and your family. So think of the family as a place where saints are made. And is it important to make saints? Yes. Because in heaven, there are only saints. If you want to be in heaven with Jesus for eternity, it is required that you become a saint. And the family is a beautiful way for each of us in the family to help each other to become saints. When we have children, I want to just discuss children a little bit. As our kids grew up, things changed. We had to learn how to discipline them, what we needed to do for the kids. And it's important because, I don't know about here, but in the United States, I know they always say the three things that ruin marriages are problems with money, sex, and children. Those three things can cause a family to break up if they're not handled right. Money problems, not enough money, causing issues of debt, making there tension and arguing and fighting, sex issues between a husband and a wife, and having children and how to raise children. Those three things are the biggest problems in a marriage. So my wife and I used to sit and talk about those three things. We'd get good books to read about them. We would discuss them. Knowing they were problems, we would discuss them. And one of them was children. Children can be very disruptive in a family. Husbands, you are the head of the homes. You should be the disciplinarians with the children. You're the ones that should discipline and raise them and teach them. And when they need to be brought up short and put in a chair for a while or even given a spanking, it's the father who should do that. Don't leave that up to the wife. The wife should be the nurturer of the family. I remember when we had our kids, I told my kids, you never say no to your mother. Don't ever let me hear you raise your voice to your mother. Don't ever say no or disobey her, because she is my princess. And you will respect her. And if you don't respect her, I'm coming after you. My kids to this day adore their mother. They still treat her like a princess. They won't yell at their mother. They will obey her even now when they're in their 30s. One got a daughter who's almost 40. She still adores her mother. I said to my kids, I was living with this girl, and I still call my wife my girlfriend all the time. Even my grandkids say, where's your girlfriend? Because they know my wife is my girlfriend. And I said to my kids as they were growing up, this is my girlfriend. And we lived together long before you got here. And we're going to be living together long after you're gone. And if you think you're going to come into our family and disrupt that, you got another thing coming. Well, Dad, you love Mom more than you do us, don't you? You're darn right I do. Of course I love your mother more. We've been together before you came along, and we're going to be together after you're gone. I love you. You're my kids. But don't ever think that I don't love Mom. We're one. We're a covenant partner. We're one. God made us to be one. So we would sit up, my wife and I, and discuss and plan how we're going to raise our family, how we're going to deal with the kids. We used to put the rules on the refrigerator so that the kids would know the rules. And we had rules. I disciplined the kids. I did not let them go crazy in the home. There's nothing that can make it difficult for a husband and a wife to love each other and have a nice home as if kids are undisciplined, screaming all the time, thinking they're selfish, disobedient. That's when a husband has to take the child and sit down with them and say, look, we need to get this straightened out. You have to become under control. Nobody's going to be perfect, but at least I think within a family, the father has to keep the control of the family, and it makes it much better. Parents also must have a united front. You know what I mean by that? Sometimes a kid will go to the dad and say, Dad, can I go out and do such and such? And he says, no, not today. So the kid's smart. He goes to Mom and says, Mom, can I go out and do something today? And the mom says, okay, go ahead. Not knowing that the dad already said no. And the kid's out the door and goes. I always said, and my wife always said too, if they came and said, "Can we do this?" I said, "Have you already asked your mother?" "Yes." "What did she say?" "No." "Then why did you come and ask me? You know Mom and I are going to stick together. You think you're going to get us apart? You think you're going to get your mom and I fighting about whether you can go out tonight or not? If she says no, it's no." Then the kids always knew that you couldn't work Mom against Dad or work Dad against Mom. Talk to each other, plan together, make sure that that happens. I just close with a couple of thoughts. When we started raising children, so I said to my wife, I want to raise rebels. I have a talk I give in the United States called Raising Rebels. I want my children to rebel against the ungodly culture that's out there. I want my children to be godly children. I want them to put Jesus Christ first in their life. I want them to get married and stay married for a lifetime like my wife and I do. And in order to do that, you have to go against the stream. You have to swim upstream. You can't float with the stream of culture. Only dead things float with the water down. Living things swim upstream. A salmon can only reproduce if he swims upstream, and it's hard. You have to go against sometimes your society and your country and your culture and the ideas that are there. And I told my kids, I want you to be rebels in a good way. Rebels for Jesus Christ. Rebels against abortion, against contraception, against all of the evils of the world. And you know, my kids took me up on that because our family is a rebel family. I view myself now as being part of an like a secret club. Our family's a secret club. Nobody else can join it. It's just us. We have another secret club called the church. We're part of that too. But our family is a secret club that we're going to stand for holiness even in an unholy world. And I want my kids to learn that. And you know what my son did when he got his first car? When he was 16, he'd been saving his money since he was 8 years old to buy his own car. And when he was 16, we took him down and he bought a car with the money he'd been saving all his life as a little boy. And he had 5 friends. And these 5 boys with my son made a pledge together. They made a pledge that they were going to stay virgins until married. And they did. In America, that's a big deal because if you don't go around having sex, there's something wrong with you. You're viewed as being something wrong with you if you don't go around having sex with people before marriage. But my son said, no, I'm going to be a rebel. I'm going to stand for Jesus Christ and for morality. And all of my kids asked me to give them a chastity ring. Do you know what a chastity ring is? You have that here? It's a ring that they put on their hand. I bought it for them. And we take them to the priest at church and they make a pledge before Mother and I and before the priest and God that they will remain virgins until they are married. And my son said, I'm going to be a rebel. And he got 5 friends in the parish, and they made a club. And they were all going to stick together. And they had something that when they were out walking around, they had what they called a babe alert. A babe is a beautiful girl, right? It was a babe alert. Whenever they were walking and they saw a girl come with not enough clothes on, where usually boys would look, they said, babe alert, and they'd all look the other way. They said, we're going to keep our eyes holy. We're going to only look at things that are holy. We're not going to look upon a girl to lust after her. So they're walking along and babe alert, and they'd all look the other way. And my son went with his new car and he bought big pieces of plywood and he painted signs on them against abortion. And they came home and they said, Dad. Oh, and then when the people were yelling, of course, they rolled down the windows and said, save the babies. God loves you too. And he came home and said, Dad, we had so much fun. We were out there preaching the gospel about pro-life and everybody hated us. And we just told them, God loves you too. Save the babies. He said, we had so much fun we couldn't believe it. Because they were rebels. Rebels for Jesus. I think every family should view themselves as rebels for Jesus. A secret society part of the Catholic Church, which is another secret society. We're becoming fewer and fewer in the world. You just look at what's happening with all of ISIS and all the Muslims and so on. Christians are being persecuted everywhere by communists in China and North Korea. They're being persecuted by all over the world now. Even the United States and here, Christians are persecuted. So the Catholic Church is becoming this big club. And in a way, we have to be a family of rebels that is going to serve Jesus Christ no matter what, stand up for Him. And I can tell you that in the Christian life, there is nothing more rewarding than for a husband and a wife to love each other for a lifetime and to raise a family for Jesus and to put Jesus first in your life. God bless you. May you be successful at it. When you're not, pray and go to confession and start over again. Thank you very much. God bless you.